Barbie, an accidental men's rights masterpiece. Well, I will happily admit I did not see that twist coming, as what we have here is, pretty damn far out of left or, I suppose, right field here, as the Barbie movie, it attempts to push a modern-year wokist progressive message, but it understands its own ideology so poorly that it ends up actually making a very good men's rights argument, which we will get to in a bit, as the movie itself is, nothing particular to write home about. It has a couple halfway decent jokes, but at the same time, from the very beginning, you can tell that the movie's creators have a very dark view on things, as the opening scene sees a bunch of young girls playing with dolls, and the narrator laments that the only dolls that existed were baby dolls, forcing the young girls to play only as mothers, which wasn't very fun, and enforced, of course, patriarchy, the movie's big bad villain. But then Barbie appeared, and suddenly all the young girls could throw away their dolls and play with Barbie instead. And by throw away, I mean smashing the dolls' heads open on rocks. Okie dokie then. I will admit, if the movie was aiming for shock value, it got me damn well, as I was literally sitting there with my mouth agape like, holy shit. I know they're dolls, but the imagery right now is of young girls bashing babies' brains open on the stones. And I thought shout your abortion was bad. We are then swiftly introduced to Barbie Land, where everything is perfect and plastic and pink. Whereas the movie's narrator informs us all problems of feminism and equal rights have been solved. And by solved, we mean that the Barbies instituted a brutal matriarchal dictatorship, where the women have absolute authority and power, not merely over the men, the Kens, but over the very laws of the universe and physics itself. And I ain't kidding either. Literally, when Barbie has a bad day, her food gets burnt, she loses the power to levitate, and her milk expires. The entirety of the universe revolves around Barbie. And the Kens, the men, they're not even just second-class citizens, they are barely window dressing. As one quote early on in the movie captures so brilliantly, quote, Barbie has a great day every day, but Ken only has a great day if Barbie looks at him. End quote. And that is no exaggeration. Again, every Barbie has a dream house. Every Barbie has a car. Every Barbie has everything she could ever want, which she has bought with her own money. How she earned that money? Well, it's unclear, as everything seems to be available in abundant quantities. As for the Kens, they have no property rights. In fact, no Ken appears to own a house. And at the end of the day, when Barbie retreats to her girls' night, Ken simply wanders down the street to go sleep, presumably on the beach. They obviously can't own cars, they are not allowed to drive, and they are not allowed to sit in the front seat alongside a Barbie. The Kens only apparently exist to be gawked at by the females, to look presentable and sexy, and to carry out mundane tasks like washing and drying things. Now, the movie's intent with this is to show the gender imbalance in the real world by reversing it in Barbie Land. Because, of course, in the real world, women do not have property rights. They certainly aren't allowed to drive cars and exist primarily for the sexual gratification of the opposite gender. Oh, wait. And the best part is, when Barbie needs to go to the real world to figure out why her life is no longer perfect, she brings Ken along, where Ken realizes that hold on. Wait, my world is unfathomably oppressive? In the real world, men have rights? What do you mean? We can have an education? We can be doctors and presidents too? I thought only women could be that. What the hell? He identifies this as patriarchy. Because in the worldview of this movie's writers, which I hesitate to even refer to as a worldview because this isn't even wokeism. For all of the weaponized hypocrisy of the modern day progressives, at least they have a political worldview. At least they have a philosophy. They have something that at least resembles a cohesive opinion of the world around them. This movie has none. As when Ken returns to Barbie Land and puts in place his evil plan to make it Ken Land, where Kens will have all of the privileges that the women had exclusively before, this is seen as the most horrible thing ever. What do you mean men have rights? What do you mean men can get an education and get a good job? That's ridiculous. And the worst part is, all of the other Barbies, they go along with it. They don't seem to mind at all. They raise no objections and in fact claim that they are happier than ever in this new world. Because, well, in reality, the only thing that Ken did was switch up the roles so that the Kens were in power rather than women. He didn't take any privileges that the Barbies didn't have already. He didn't do anything that the Barbies didn't already do. He just reversed the gender roles. And yet, of course, this is seen as the most horrible thing ever. This is terrible. The entirety of Barbie Land will collapse, despite it seemingly functioning just fine. And so, main Barbie, stereotypical Barbie, comes up with a plan to fix all of the other Barbies' brainwashing by teaching them feminist theory. Which immediately goes, yes, we must oppress the men again. A mask-off moment and a half if ever I've seen one. And incidentally, what is the Ken's dastardly plan? Well, they're gonna have a democratic vote to change the Constitution to favor the Kens over the Barbies. They're literally going to vote. So clearly they are the majority, and thus in a democracy, well, they would be the ones in charge, right? But the Barbies elect to ruin this by having mainstream Barbie seduce Ken and go, okay Ken, maybe we can finally be boyfriend-girlfriend. This emotional manipulation, which to be fair is a very womanly thing to do, I suppose, trick all of the Kens away from the polls so that only the women get to vote. And guess what the women vote for? They vote to strip all of the Kens of their power, privilege, authority, and grant it right on back to the women again. The literal tyranny of the minority. But hey, there is at least a little bit of a consolatory scene at the end, where one of the Ken asks the president, the female president obviously, hey, can we at least get one representative on the Supreme Court? And the president says, no, of course you can't. Maybe if you behave, we'll give you a circuit court judge. See, this is the true beauty of this movie. It was no doubt penned to be a feminist movie, as repeatedly throughout the series it does give off the usual feminist talking points, like, oh, women are expected to be perfect, and yet they're also expected to be humble, like what the hell is this doublethink nonsense, and so on. But through sheer undiluted absence of writing talent, and anything that even resembles the most fundamental recognition of basic political philosophy, they ended up creating a movie where Ken comes across as the unironic hero. as a freedom fighter desperately trying to get some sort of recognition, not even power. At the end of the day, Ken surrenders without a fight. He simply goes to cry and goes, I don't know who I am. I don't exist without a Barbie. I have no place in this world. And in the other world, people saw me for me. He didn't even want to be a tyrant. There wasn't an evil bone in his body. He didn't do any of this for villainous motivations. He literally just wanted to be seen. And that is exactly how a lot of men feel. There is another scene where in the real world, which is of course a sort of reflection of Barbie Land, Mattel starts selling Ken dolls because of course Barbie Land is being turned into Ken Land. And so they create a product of Ken. Ken's dream house. Ken has a car. Ken gets to have friends now and relationships amongst men and not simply existing for the female gaze. And this product is flying off the shelves. They can't produce it fast enough to satisfy demands. Ken is the hero. Ken's demands were utterly reasonable and spoke to what was clearly a deep-seated emotional need amongst men. Because here's the thing, here's the reality and the truth of it all. Whilst obviously Barbie Land is an over-the-top comparison played up for comedy and laugh, in the real world there is a gender imbalance. And it is not to the detriment of women. Or more correctly, let me rephrase myself, it is not universally to the detriment of women. I am sure there are women that have challenges that men do not face in certain parts of the world. Absolutely. There are countries in which women are outright oppressed, no doubt about it, but here in the West, that is not the case. And particularly when it comes to relationships, which is, at the end of the day, what Barbie uses to manipulate Ken, all of the power lies on one side. And reality ain't all that far away from Barbie Land. Seeing as today, if you so much as look at a woman in the wrong way, you could be the subject of a new viral TikTok or a mainstream media article. If you so much as approach a woman, she could shout you down and scream how you must never approach a woman anywhere. The very idea of a man approaching a woman becomes mainstream news today. Hell, let's not even put the bar that low. Just a few days ago, London Mayor Sadiq Khan launched a campaign which says, "Say mate." To a mate, English for friend, if they hear unacceptable language about women and girls. Unacceptable language. We have arrived at the point where, unironically, the state, the real world state, will tell you to police fellow men's behavior lest you make women feel uncomfortable. And what makes it so much worse is, of course, that this isn't a movie. This is real life, which makes a movie like Barbie so unintentionally hilarious and simultaneously kind of inspiring. And so, all hail Ken, the savior and the champion of the equal rights movement. Godspeed, sir. Have a good day.